Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, Tyler Shough, Ben McCollum, Geraldo Rivera, Lubbock Cuisine, and dueling Big 12 banjos. Next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you again for making us your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Today's episode brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. And when you enter the promo code lockedoncollege, they're throwing in a free custom Yeti style tumbler with every order at birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. He's the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you once again, doing it hump day style. And that means we are word associating on this Wednesday. Once again, got a list of things to run through here. And we are beginning on a football front here in West Texas with the Tyler Shough, a guy who I have seen, Chris, on some lists. I'm not surprised to see him on this offseason. And then other lists, I don't even see him mentioned, and I am surprised to not see him mentioned. So it seems like, off-season, preseason-wise, man, his expectations run in a wide range of either known or, I suppose, totally unknown. So what are you thinking? Where are you at when I give you Tyler Shough?
Yeah, my word here is going to be mixed because I think that's exactly what you just talked about. The discussion about Tyler Shough is, and I think there's some context with this discussion. Like when you start talking about, because what got us, thinking about Shough lately, in the terms of the conversation we're having now, was there was a story done by The Athletic that ranked these quarterbacks in various tiers across the country. And I think they mentioned 31 quarterbacks and he wasn't listed. And they had 5 different tiers. Caleb Williams of USC was in the top tier all by himself. I have no issue with that. But you go to tier 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I think there was 31 names listed. And you had, just for Texas Tech's purposes, you had Bo Nix, the Oregon quarterback. He was on tier 3. You had Dylan Gabriel of Oklahoma, who was tier 4. You had Jalen Daniels of Kansas, who was also tier 4. You had Quinn Ewers, who was tier 5 for Texas. Will Howard for Kansas State, also tier 5, and then Jackson Dart, who Tyler Shough just beat in the bowl game for Ole Miss. He was also tier 5. And so it got me to, I think, and then I see this story. It's like it ranked who's the best college quarterback in each state. And I saw some graphic, and it had the double T across the state of Texas because it was suggesting that Shough is the best quarterback in the state of Texas, going into the season, over Ewers, over Chandler Morris, over Spencer Shapen at Baylor, and on it goes. And UTSA's got a pretty good quarterback as well. So then I just was like, this is just all over the place here, Cowan. I mean, and I think part of it is because he hasn't been named the starter yet. Maybe that's part of it. Like, how could we include a guy if we don't even know he's gonna, be the guy, for sure. I looked up numbers specifically for these Big 12 guys for last year. We all know Shough didn't play but 5 games. And it's going to say he played in 7 games. 2 of those were just brief stints. He was nowhere near healthy, and maybe that hurts him too. But, in fairness to people that aren't including Shough in some of these lists, his numbers are fairly modest. However, I do think it's fascinating to me that Ewers and even a guy like Will Howard has gotten so much praise because their numbers are, I don't know, somewhat modest as well. I mean, they're not just eye-popping or anything like that. Gabriel's got the best. Dylan Gabriel, Oklahoma, he's easily the one that's got the best stat line from last year. And he missed, I think, 1 or 2 games was all. But, I mean, statistically, he was lights out. I just think people look at him and say he's a bit undersized. He ran the ball quite a bit, but and his team went 6-7. But so Howard, Ewers, Daniels, and Gabriel, these are the guys all consistently listed ahead of Shuck in like league conversations, and that's been fairly consistent. And their numbers are better than Shuck. But anyway, it's just been kind of interesting to see kind of where people fall on the quarterback lists or the Shuck opinions, because some people think he's an afterthought. Other people think he could be an all-conference type of guy if he stays healthy all year. So it runs the gamut.
Yeah, I'm going unproven for Tyler Shough because I just still think at the end of the day that's what he is, Chris. We have not seen a full season from this guy ever in his college career. He's not given anyone a full season as a starting quarterback for whatever reason, where you saw him at the wheel for 12 games or 11 of 12 games or something even close to that. So I think as far as his ability to turn in an entirely complete season resume, it's completely unproven. And I get why that leaves him or keeps him off of plenty of people's radars. I would also suggest to you that some of what we saw that was, in my opinion, his best, Chris, was not last year him necessarily lighting it up through the air. It was some of those days where he was being physical as a ball carrier, where he was helping his team the most, like where Tech's offense was really doing some things that looked like they were being successful, at least within the context of that game. Again, like Iowa State as an example, I know that game called for some different things, whether it was the opponent or the climate or whatever, that you weren't replicating every other week. But I also think there's some time or there's some moments whenever you're getting into the preseason like spotlights and things like that where you think, all right, well, I'm going to find a quarterback. And it's not really, to me, what he did to help his team win in every conceivable way. It's just within the area of passing statistics. What'd this guy do? Because I'm just a simple media guy, and these numbers are easy to read. So I know if they're big, except in the interception column, that means he had a good year. There's some of that too, because Tyler Shuck's like at the end of some of those days where he was really impactful as a quarterback, his statistics may have not been like all that glamorous just as a passer or whatever. And you touched on some of that right there. But I really think unproven is still a word that you can tie to Tyler Shough just because we haven't seen the entirety of a season with him at the wheel. But like we also talked about a couple of weeks ago, if you're a Texas Tech fan, if you were watching football in Lubbock last year, if you got to see Tyler Shough when he was healthy, you've got to understand by now that he's obviously an above average quarterback and a guy that probably could be on some all-conference short lists. But one of the last things you said there in your comment, and I hate it because we're this far down the track and still mentioning this appropriately, but still mentioning this, if he stays healthy. We're still here in 2023, Chris, saying, all right, well, if he can just stay healthy, then he can be a really effective quarterback. Well, part of being effective is staying healthy. So I think we do, and I think we've done this. I think we do have to give, some slack to those who keep him off of those radars for reasons you and I have outlined. But we also can't deceive ourselves with what we've seen by virtue of the team that we were following and covering and watching throughout the year. And at the end of it, that included a really effective Tyler Shough, which all of this leads to me, Chris, to being very excited for his opportunity this year, because I know that like I do, he's married too, very pleasant, but he's a very motivated individual. And so I'm anxious to see him take some of these talking points around him as a football player, around his football profile, and maybe use that as motivation, because if anything, he will. But yeah, we're still sitting here again talking about, all right, hope we can keep the guy healthy. And I think that's why you see sometimes a disconnect possibly, just as far as some of this offseason spotlight stuff.
Yeah. And it's important to note, and we've had these conversations too, but it's important to note too, Will Howard for all the praise that he's getting, he just played in 7 games last year. That's how many Tyler Shough played in. Now, granted, Will Howard did orchestrate a win in the Big 12 title game, and so that probably,
on his back.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, we're all just creatures of emotion and like in the moment stuff, right? And that was a huge stage, and that dude did something like I don't want to say I've never seen it, but that was like a singularly great individual performance. And that's some of what we most recently remember, right? So
yeah,
we're creatures of that kind of thing too. So I get it.
Yeah, and Ewers 10 games, Jalen Daniels 9 games, and all that. So nobody rolled through the full season. So, yes, people need to see Shuck with a full season. That is very fair. We all need and want to see that. I think the NFL folks are really the ones that want to see that the most. But it's just funny how some guys have kind of like, that's not the same issue with them, even though they had some injury issues as well. But and again, I go back to maybe it's because he's not even really been named the starter yet. We don't even know if he will be the starter. I think that's the case.
We know,
yeah,
don't we?
Yeah,
We know.
I think, yeah.
Are you winking at me, or you just got orange juice in your eye?
It was pulp. It was
pulp in the eye.
Yeah,
okay,
right.
no problem.
And I hate pulp. I buy the pulp-free orange juice religiously. Anytime you go somewhere and there's like freshly squeezed, I'm like, yeah, I'm out, man. I want the stuff straight out of the can or the machine. It's got to be pulp-free orange juice, man. I can't stand the pulp.
You got a strainer, buddy? Because I despise pulp. I'll leave this resort over pulp right now. I've left nicer places over pulp than this dump. All right, we're rolling on. And coming up next, we're making a hard left. Stepping away from football, we're headed to hoops. Grant McCaslin still in the process of assembling his supporting staff, but some of what has been happening here recently, I think, at least as a Texas Tech fan, I like, but there's so much vagary involved, Chris, that I'm not sure what to like or not like at this point in time. So we'll get into some of that coming up next on Locked On Texas Tech. But first, today's episode brought to you by Birddogs, the most versatile, best-looking, best-feeling shorts in the universe. You're used to those stiff fabrics other short makers are throwing at you, but that's not what you're getting with Birddogs. You're getting cloud knit fabric, which provides stretch without giving up fit. And yes, it feels as good as it sounds. Cloud knit fabric made from real, organic, cage-free clouds. Try them out today at birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege. Anti-stink, sweat-wicking fabric, keeping you cool, dry all day long. Made for all occasions because they're the most versatile shorts known to man. So check them out right now at birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege. And while you're there, enter in the promo code LockedOnCollege for a free custom tumbler with every order. You're not going to want to take your Bird Dogs off. I promise you that. You want that sculpted lower body look, but you don't have room for a squat rack. Forget the weights. Get with Bird Dogs. They're going to stretch and design to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg to give you that sculpt you're looking for at birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege. Thanks for making Locked On Texas Tech a part of your day, whenever, wherever, however you're doing it. We appreciate it. Subscribe on YouTube if you haven't so far, so you never miss an episode. Trying to make a push to 4,000 YouTube subscribers by kickoff coming up September 2nd. So chopping that wood, making some headway, and we'll get there with your support. Appreciate all of you everydayers out there on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. We are rolling on this word association Wednesday. Chris, let's head over to hoops, because this department, while working in like secrecy, cloak and dagger, this department is still very busy right now, still very active right now as far as what's happening under the surface of the water, so to speak. And this may be something that fans out there are going to roll their eyes at when I say it again, just like the word health. Oh, we're still talking health with Tyler Shough. Ben McCollum. Oh, we're still talking. We are still talking Ben McCollum. Chris Level has told us before, you will continue to hear his name until you don't, until he is eliminated from this process. But got to say, Chris, I don't know. It seems like there's maybe even some fresh smoke surrounding one Ben McCollum. So where are you at when I give you the name Ben McCollum?
Yeah, so my word here is mystery because because I you said it. His name has been associated with this staff or these conversations really since the search began after Grant McCaslin was hired. And that none of that has ever changed. I think there's been times when it looked imminent. There's been times where it looked like, man, I guess he's not going to do this. But I would tell you that, in the last week, and some of this is in the last, day or so, I've had people like swear to me he was offered the associate head coach's job. And then the other people will tell you, oh, he's still coming. He's just going to be like in an off the court role, like maybe in one of those fourth and fifth assistant type roles, which the NCAA is kind of changing the rules on, which means they can get on the floor and coach. They can recruit. They just can't leave campus and recruit. That's really they're an assistant coach, but they're just one of the only three guys can be designated with, hey, getting on the road and going to recruit and all that. So, and so those two roles have been strongly mentioned to me. What's the holdup? I ask. What's the holdup? Like what is everybody waiting on? Well, he just not real sure about wanting to not be a head coach anymore, kind of thing, which I've heard before repeatedly. And again, I would just say too that he's a Division II head coach, and I think you have to understand that that's not like, and as far as coaching skills, no disrespect here, but this isn't some. You're not leaving some glamorous necessarily deal. This is these jobs, or I always use the Midwestern State example because it's fairly local. It's Wichita Falls, and that's a Division II head coaching job as well. And so it's not like you can't get one of those if you come here and you don't like it or whatever. But some people just like being in charge. They want to be in control of their own schedule. But what has led me to kind of believe that he is heavily leaning toward coming here is there's been multiple conversations with people, I think, about his kids playing at various high schools here in town. And I think those conversations have been ongoing and intermittent and things like that. So, but it does remain a mystery. Is he coming? Is he not coming? And if so, what role will he fill? Because it's anything from Grant McCaslin's right-hand man and associate head coach, and you got the big fancy title and probably the salary that comes with it, or you're maybe, hey, you're an analyst, you're a coach, you're an X's and O's guy that doesn't have to travel around and go recruit. I mean, everything in between. But again, I will not stop mentioning his name until Coach McCaslin says, "Hello, folks, this is our staff." It's like
say his name.
Yeah, like Big Tex. Hello.
We're gonna be protesting outside the arena at some point. Say his name.
Yeah.
Ben McCollum.
So that's my pitch on.
Okay, so your word was mystery. I like that, but it does sound like a shred of clarity offered there because you touched on something I wanted to ask you about because I'd heard this as well, and I heard it in a hilarious way. The high school basketball thing. Has he visited Lubbock? Is he putting out feelers like where should my kids enroll? I shouldn't say high school basketball, but just high school sports in general, I guess. That area. Because I had someone very plugged into the high school basketball scene in the LBK, Chris, come to me and ask me, has Ben McCollum been in Lubbock? Is he putting out feelers for yada, yada, what I just said? I said, I don't know. He said he has. he gives me an answer.
Yeah, he had. I do believe that he has been in Lubbock. Yes, I think more than one occasion.
I don't know. I don't know exactly what to make of it at this point, but it does seem like fresh smoke is there. It hasn't gotten less likely to happen as we sit here today. So stay tuned is all I can tell you. But I was going to go with multiple words here and say Al Capone's vault. Let's hope it's not one of those situations. Is there even a Ben McCollum out there?
Geraldo Rivera.
That's right. Maybe I should have said Geraldo.
I mean, what was it? Was that like a 2-hour special? And I watched this. There's like a Calvin. There's like a 30
Did
for
you
30
really?
type. Yeah, there's like a 30 for 30 type documentary about the documentary. Because it's this build up. It's this vault that they found of Al Capone. It's in downtown Chicago. And Geraldo Rivera's career never recovered after he was kind of the front man of that vault. And they dig into this deal and ain't nothing there. There's no
Syphilis
dead bodies.
Medication.
Yeah,
this isn't exciting.
There's no dead bodies. There's no dude in there with concrete shoes. There was no money,
no gold bars, no nothing.
Yeah, nothing, man. It was just
Let's hope this is not that situation, right? Okay, so I'm hoping it's not that, but I'm getting a Capone's vault kind of feel right now. But yeah, I think maybe there are some there's a feeling in the wind here in the 806 recently. Again, fresh smoke is out there. Taste it. Tastes good. All right. Still intriguing, but the mystery is still swirling. So don't go anywhere. Stay here to Locked On Texas Tech for the latest on that evolving for months and months and months situation. When it comes to a conclusion, we got you back to discuss it right here on Locked On Texas Tech. We're back for one more round coming up ahead. I thought there was going to be talk of food, so I included one of these deliberately, but also some dueling Big 12 banjos. These guys support this. No, they don't. We're recapping a 24-hour period, unlike, well, basically like the rest of them over the last year for the Big 12 Conference. Next on Locked On Texas Tech. Thanks for joining us again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, coming to you from west of the 100th Meridian, where it's really going down. Another great day in the great state. Always a great one when we get to be with you. So thanks for being out there. Subscribe on YouTube if you haven't so far, so you never miss an episode. Back for one more round before we are out today. And Chris, let's start with, I don't know, a Big 12 conversation. How about it? Dueling banjos over the last 48 hours or so via a couple of different media outlets. It kind of goes back to what you and I were talking about. What was that, on Monday, I think? Big 12 decoupling, possibly. Basketball-specific revenue rights, basketball-specific conference membership, or not. UConn, Gonzaga, etc. You guys are probably familiar with the conversation by now. But was fairly interesting to see. And I know they weren't talking about exactly the same people, but between, what was it? I think Stuart Mandel and Brett McMurphy. I know McMurphy was one. I think Mandel was the other. That was saying basically either Brett Yormark is going rogue on some of this basketball-only inclusion, or no, he does have support. There was a little like sidebar of, well, it's ADs possibly who support it, but coaches don't, or vice versa. But I tell you, I was left spinning. And if I could lead it off, that's the word I would use, spinning, after Brett Yormark and the Big 12 Conference are reported on in a couple of different ways yesterday.
I can't speak about Brett McMurphy. I know Brett does a great job. Used to have him on when we were doing radio shows all the time. But I will tell you that Dennis Dodds is, anytime you see him reporting anything that has to do with the Big 12 or, citing sources or whatever, I mean, I can just tell you that when I was at the Big 12 tournament, and I think I told you this at the time, but when I was at the Big 12 tournament, Dennis Dodds and Brett Yormark, they stood next to each other and they talked a long time, for 30 minutes to an hour. And that's when some of this conversation was still kind of in its infancy. But I just know that there's an open dialogue between those two guys. So anytime Dennis Dodd says anything, I mean, a lot of times I just kind of like, well, I mean, he got that straight from Brett. Now, it may not be directly attributed to Yormark, but it sounds like what we've got here is, because there was in one report, it was listed both ways. It was like Gonzaga is basketball only, and then Gonzaga with their minor sports coming along. There's a UConn report that like the coaches support it. And it was made very clear in the last 24 hours. Hey, we want UConn in all of its sports, and then there's a lot of discussion about money and what this is worth and how this is phased in, because this is where it gets tricky. Because see, if it's Colorado, Arizona, those options we talked about, if they were to join the Big 12, these are easy to figure out, because the TV folks have said if you add somebody that comes from a Power 5 league, they get a full share. Like we'll increase your TV deal. There's nothing in there really about this outside the box kind of addition, and that's where they have to figure it out. Do they, and is it just basketball only? Is it all sports? Do each member institution need to kind of help fund an addition here by hey, we'll give, everybody gives a little bit, and then we can add. We're trying to build long-term relevancy here, so this is important to add. They've got the $100 million that's sitting there in some form or fashion from Oklahoma and Texas departing a year early, whether that's money that's just withheld and the Big 12 is holding on to it, or whether you don't even have it yet, but that factors in here at some level as well. But it's pretty fascinating. Bottom line, though, is my word about Brett Yormark, which is kind of what started this conversation. I'm going to say right now, and maybe I'm overstating it, but I'm going to say best, because I think he's the best commissioner in the country right now. He has maybe in some ways one of, if not the toughest job, or he did when he took it over. I just think that it's easy to see where your league is the third best or in the third best shape or whatever. And so much of this has happened in the year plus that he kind of has been, under center, if you will, because he's done a lot. He's done everything he said he would do. His moves have been on point to this point. And I think that we hear the ACC grumbling. We know the Pac-12 is a mess, at least the way it's perceived. And I think most people would agree with that. But, I mean, I'm not so sure that the Big Ten just got a brand new commissioner. Greg Sankey is just like – he's just kind of sitting there and hey, yeah, if y'all just want to do an 8-game schedule, that's fine. I really don't care. Again, soft. But I think Yormark, man, I mean, he may be the best commissioner out there right now.
Yeah, Sankey, he's kind of like whoever Texas's head coach is. You're going to have to go above and beyond to prove anything, because you're just driving a Ferrari. So good on you to keep it in the middle of the road, I guess, and don't screw anything up. Big Ten, I don't even know who their commissioner is. Kevin Warren was a disaster. He proved himself to be an embarrassment during COVID with the decisions or lack thereof, or feeding into some of the fear and ignorance that was so pervasive at that time. And then he gets a job with the Bears, and the Big Ten finds out in his departing wake, he was giving away TV content that he didn't even have the right to give away. We don't want to play night games. By the way, how soft did we find out the Big Ten was? They don't typically play night games after like November 1st. I didn't even know that was like a rule for them. Everybody's got their rule. SEC, don't let the Aggies play anybody interesting in a bowl game ever. And the Big Ten, we don't play night games after November 1st. I didn't know everybody had these dainty little like bowling alley gutter barriers or whatever they put on their seasons. I know there were some, but not that many. But I think I'd have to agree with you in some ways, although I do hesitate because we're so early on, Chris. And my fear is that you go so wild with new crazy ideas that you muck up the original good idea, which was having a competitive conference that people cared about, primarily the people that support those institutions within it, which is why you're in a better standing than the Pac-12 conference, period. It's because somebody or more people care in Manhattan, Kansas than in Berkeley, period. That is why I think the edge is still there, where there's television rating numbers, turnstile numbers, whatever you want to look at. The reason why the Big 12 is in better standing, even after losing 2 historical blue bloods, than the Pac-12 conference after losing 1, is because you care more for whatever reason. I don't know if they're just bored in Kansas and Texas, they're not bored in California or Washington or whatever. And I don't care, but there's a reason why. But I hope that Brett Yormark doesn't run so wild with new ideas, and we're not tightening the belt. We're getting a bigger belt, and we're expanding, and I obviously that could be to your detriment. So I just hope he knows when to tap that brake and maybe really make sure you're consolidating the value of what you already have, as opposed to really feeling like you've got to go do some wild things to create new value. That does not, I said wild purposefully there, because that does not include the obvious answers of adding Power 5 options. Adding 4 corner schools or like a pissed off ACC school, those are not wild ideas. That's an obvious idea. But like basketball only inclusion, and hey, we're going to go try and scoop up all these basketball programs and be the even best basketball conference because you're already number one. I'm into some of it, but I'm cautiously into some of it. So I hope that Brett Yormark is in those same shoes. I would guess he probably is, but I wouldn't disagree with your best assessment. Okay, there was talk of food in our pre-show meeting. If we were to bring up once again a recruiting weekend for Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders, and I was down for that really on either front because both are celebratory occasions right now. Joey McGuire's recruiting efforts or food in the LBK. So which way are we going here as we put this cherry on top of this episode, Chris, with a recruiting weekend thought?
So I've seen some of these itineraries before, when they put these recruiting weekends together. And again, every coach has a different take on it, a different idea of how we want to occupy a prospect and their family's time and all that. But I'll break our own rules here. But Taste of Lubbock is kind of what I'm going to give you here. Because this is actually something that they do and use as a selling pitch, and I really don't know much past this, but I think so. Look, one of the primary restaurants that they take these guys to almost every recruiting weekend, they will take them out to Evie Mae's, the actual restaurant out in Wolforth, and it's, beef ribs, prime rib, brisket, ribs, everything you think. It's just like, yeah, you're cooking with gas at that point. You are in good shape. All the desserts, I don't know if they rent out the place or whatever, but so those guys get to experience that. I think Las Brisas is one of the steakhouses they go to, but here's the one intriguing thing that they do. At some point on one of the long days, if they were to come in, say, on a Friday, and then they would leave on a Sunday around lunchtime, Saturday would be the full day that they were here. At some point on those Saturdays, they do what's called a Taste of Lubbock. And I think this is I love your kind of for you to weigh in here as well. But I think, and so what this is here's some of the traditional Lubbock cuisine that we're famous for, or whatever. I've heard rumors of Spanky's fried cheese. I've heard rumors of the one guy calzone. One guy from Italy. You have anything else to local fare.
It sounds like they're already celebrating being a friend of the beef industry with the first two answers you gave. So I'm just glad for that. I think 16 ounce, 24 ounce T-bone, porterhouse, ribeye. Are we talking offensive lineman? We talking little inside slot receiver? I don't know. But if you're a friend of the beef industry, you're a friend of mine. I just love that we got to use the term today. And I don't know if I've ever heard this in my 38 years of life. Lubbock Cuisine. So thank you for bringing that to my lexicon.
Hey, Dirk's steak fingers, I think, are a part of the taste of, or I've heard. Or maybe the chicken fingers too. So anyways, it's fascinating. I think it's great. It's like, hey man, boys, you want to come to school here, and here's why. Here's some fried cheese. Here's your calzone. There's a George Costanza and a Mr. Steinbrenner, story to be had there. Right. But the Dirk steak finger. I just think it's very smart marketing. It's very smart to sell your city. And there's no better way than to tap into a kid's, mindset than food. Especially
quickest way to a man's heart, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
doesn't matter how old the man is. The quickest way to a man's heart is through his stomach. So good on you, Joey McGuire. Okay, my word for that, yes. Where are we going? We got a couple hours till high noon, and I'm happy to meet you anywhere, Chris.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely.
Let me know. All right. Appreciate you guys for joining us for another round here on Locked On Texas Tech. We're back for another coming up on the other side. So be there on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts to make us your first listen. Enjoyed it, Chris. Thanks for the time as always, man.
Yeah, man. We'll do it. We'll do it again tomorrow. Keep hope alive and enjoy some Lubbock Cuisine if you're out there, out and about today, and you're in the 806. Maybe you're listening to us from the Metroplex or who knows where. But yeah, if you're in the 806, man, enjoy you some Lubbock Cuisine.
That's right. That's right. Get on out there today and find out what they got to offer. North, south, east, west. I don't know. Hit a county road somewhere. You never know what you're going to find running up and down these roads in the 806. I encourage that wholeheartedly. For Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Again, subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. And we'll be back tomorrow. See you for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.